At this point in time, we are going to have our question and answer segment. And of course, there are some ground rules here as well, and I'd like to let you know what they are. We are going to have 4 rounds of 3 questions each. And so after the first round of 3 questions, which includes those persons who would like to ask questions online, after the first 3 questions, we are going to have the responses from the panel. So what I would like you to do is to, when you stand, identify yourself and say to whom you are addressing your question. All right, I already see about 3 hands up already, 1, 2, 3, no one else for now. And so we're going to start with the ambassador in front here.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My question is for Mr. Fernandez. Can you please share with us your thoughts about what role, what contribution can educational institutions abroad make to the successful educational reform in Guyana? Because it is very important to note that the brain drain also should have a reversal phase, that is brain gain. Thank you very much.
Pleasant good evening to everyone. And the year is still young. We're still in the month of January. So I want to say to everyone, Happy New Week, and not year, because the year doesn't get happy. It's we who needs to get happy within the year. So Happy New Week to every one of you. My names are Dr. Richard Hicks. I was told that I was born in British Guyana. However, due to reform education, I've learned that I was not born in British Guyana, I was birthed in British Guyana. My question is being addressed to the entire panel. I am the presidential ambassador of the organization called GRASP MATYX. And you say that word, GRASP Medics. That's how you say that word. It is a mathematical program that's designed to help teachers, parents, and students overcome the apprehension, intimidation, or fear of learning mathematics. It's because of Mr. Nagamutu and Mr. Branger is the reason why I left Ethiopia, resided, working, and studying in Ethiopia, came home to Guyana. Because in the year 2014, they called 2014, they campaigned, and one of their slogans drew my attention. It was titled Reform Education. So I'm so thankful to Mr. Nagamutu and Mr. Granger in the year 2014 campaigning about reform education. If they had said education, I would have come home. But the adjective, the word reform, is what made me decide to come home. So for the panel, this is the question. The question is, when, how can we implement the reform educational approach to all Guyanese students in this country to learn in the ethnic psyche of learning every topic, meaning this. It has been said gangs of 6 ethnicities, but yet we are not, most of us are not taught how to learn based on our African psychic of heritage or culture, or Indo-Guyanese heritage of culture, or Amerindian, aka indigenous. We are not being taught in the curriculum, the school system, how to comprehend all these, as they call it, subjects in the school pertaining to our ethnicity or heritage and culture. This is what I'm asking. How can we implement this in the act of reform education, instead of just being taught in only one ethnic approach, which is British English Eurocentric concept of learning. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ingrid Goodman, and I am a practitioner and educator as well. This evening I heard a lot of buzzwords. I heard education reform, socioeconomic development, education for a green economy, social environmental well-being, and building human capital. I have a few buzzwords of my own, and I'm directing this to Dr. Scott and Dr. Singh. Within the context of our multi-ethnic, multicultural, and socio-political realities here in Guyana, I would like to know who is responsible for the transference of culture from one generation to the next. Thank you.
Okay, what I particularly focus my comments on the fact that we need to make the teaching profession more attractive, because the youngsters that are getting 1s and 2s in their CXC examinations are not considering teaching as an option. They're looking anywhere else, but we got to try and get back to them to see, because it's, as someone mentioned, the most noble profession you could want, but you got to make it attractive to get the youngsters to want to teach. The question you were asking is a little further than I was doing that, because the other thing that I addressed was the question of the present structure in the education sector. A big issue in education generally is the retirement age of 55. Well, 55, you're just in your stride. So I can't see how you could be forced to retire at 55. Our headmistress at the school that I'm associated with has gone in retirement today, by coincidence, and she is a person who has at least another 10 years. But we won't go on to go to 65 at this stage, but we've got to find a way to get the resources that we have in the education sector kept for at least another 5 years gainfully. But it's not a union problem. I wouldn't get involved in that at this stage. But where the point that you were asking is what the overseas universities could do to help us. That is phase 2. You know, I'm only dealing with phase 1, which is trying to make the education system more attractive. I mean, the teaching service more attractive for the young students leaving school, and at the same time, seeing how we could help Mr. Hutson to reconstruct how the ministry presently operates. Because, as I said, 5 ministers in 12 years, really they can't get anything going, because they're only there for 2.5 years on average. Because there's no certainty. When you're a CEO in a company, it's a career. Once you continue to do a good job, you're there for the retirement. But in a ministerial position, they're only there for any time, because until they're ready to change them. So it could be 2 years, it could be 4 years. So I'm sorry I can't deal with the question particularly, but you'll understand.
All right, thank you, Mr. Finance. Now the question from the doctor from Grassmatics, I suggest that someone on the head table decides. I don't think all of you could answer at the same time. So maybe among yourselves you decide who will tackle that question, and I will have Dr. Scott address the question from Miss at the back with regards to the context within multi-ethnic, multicultural. All right. I'm hearing from the head table that the question happened to be very similar to the one from the doctor from Grassmatics, and so we let Dr. Scott deal with that question. Dr. Scott.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Yates, nice seeing you again. Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Yates, nice seeing you again. First of all, as I said, both questions relate to the issues of socialization in our society. But what I wish to relate to is what, for example, the University of Guyana is addressing. We have had a serious disconnect with history as a critical discipline in our university, and more so to engage with anthropology also as a critical discourse. The reality is that the university is, at the moment, doing all that is possible to basically revamp and re-energize the interest in history. Because if our society isn't interested in history and in the teaching of history, then we have serious problems. A lot of our cultural industries will suffer because we lack an understanding of critical aspects of our history. I note your specific reference to the issues of heritage and culture, and I can say that we have been approached to have such discourses already. So you're not far removed from what the interest of the university is in terms of engaging the issues of culture, ethnicity, education, and the various aspects, as you rightly said, that allows us not only to focus on one aspect of the way in which education and learning takes place, whether we relate to our own classics in terms of those from our heritage. The issue relating to my sister and in terms of how things are, well, we have the, as you would have learned, the basic important agents of socialization. Our school system, our own homes and families, our religious institutions, our grandparents, and our siblings, and all the other agents, including the media, are critical players to ensure that that transmission is ongoing. What is necessary is that these very institutions have to be renewed and revamped as well. Okay? So my quick response is that.
I want to give two specific examples that might help. We do a lot of work in the Rupununi, and I was sharing with Paloma the story of the community of Conishan, which is the southernmost community in Guyana, where it's a YY community, where there is a growing alienation between the young people of the village and the elders, a lot driven by their cultural influences associated with the educational system. So when kids, when they finish primary school, they have to go to Aishalton if they do well in common entrance, which is such an alien concept for a community in the deep south. But anyway, so they do common entrance, they do well, they go to Aishalton, which is a dormitory school. And they learn, they're exposed to things that are so alien from their community. So when they go back to their communities, they go back in times, for instance, in the August holidays, which is not the farming season for the village, which is in the Christmas time. So they go back, they have spare time, they have been cultured to the way of life beyond the village, and there is this alienation. So on one hand, it is the responsibility for the elders, and indeed on the other hand, it's the responsibility of the children. But if your system is failing you, then the system itself is alienating one from the other. I want to talk a little bit about Professor Devenish's work in Jamaica. Very interesting empirical evidence was shown that when Jamaican students from rural communities were taught science and math in the Jamaican Creole, they did as well as those from the cities who were taught in English. And the evidence is there.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. We are into the second round of questioning, and I have one from someone who's online. I will read that first, and then I will take two from the audience, but I wanted to go to the back a bit. Okay, I'll take you, and I'll take way to the back. There's a young lady there. We're going to take her. But let me read a question. It's from Curtis Bernard, and of course, he prefaced it with something. Let me read it for you. Reform in education must recognize that the process of learning does not only occur in the classroom. In fact, it is my belief that most learning actually happens outside the classroom. Can any member of the panel share their own opinion on how we can achieve an education system that holistically prepares citizens for productive lives as Guyanese in a manner that better integrates the school and the wider society? So that question is for any member of the panel, and I'll take the question from the young lady here and then the one way down to the back.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Cole, clinical social worker. This question is addressed to the panel. SDGs 1 and 2 speaks about ending poverty and zero hunger. Is there a role for the PTA in the education reform? And simply because you have parents who are struggling, and I'm here speaking about the single parent families that are predominantly headed by women who are struggling to earn an income, and we all know that as it relates to income, and even though we're going to school and getting an education, we're not earning as we should. Can a hungry mind learn what is the experience in the classroom as it relates to those who are struggling to eat, the hunger that we have? And here I'm going to highlight the hinterland. I've visited schools as a bona fide member of the Rights of the Child Commission, and in the hinterland, there's a hunger problem. There are children who don't go home because there's nothing to eat at home. So in this education reform, is there a role for PTAs as we look at sustainable development and reducing poverty and hunger? Because this is the crux of the matter. A mother who is unable to earn economically, it's difficult for her to even send the child to school. And this is the condition. UNICEF's report recently pointed to the face of poverty being that of an Amerindian child. I thank you.
Samantha Henry, Masters of Public Health student, and thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to ask my question, and I'll direct it to Professor Michael Scott. Professor Scott, you said in your presentation that education must be quality assured. How is the education delivered by an academic or educational institution, if you want to answer in general or specifically, the University of Guyana, quality assured? Thank you very much.
Just to add to Nicole's, the role of the PTA is quite a critical one. And what we seem not to understand, or what quite a lot of parents are shying away from, is the fact that they don't understand what are their roles when it comes to the well-being of their children in school. And so here it is again, education is important, where we will have to go out into the communities, talk with the parents, because very often when you have the PTA meetings, the parents you really want to see are not the ones who come to the meetings. And so we have to now, in terms of reforming our education system, we have to go out there to meet them. We have to go into the streets and talk with them at their level. And when we do that, then we are going to make them comfortable and wanting to come to sit and have discussions with us. When that happens, parents would want to come into schools, and then they can share. The thing is, sometimes we have the issue of parents not knowing how to explain themselves or wanting to tell you their stories for the fear of A, B, C, D, F, G, everybody know your business after. And so we have to now go out there and build that kind of relationship with our parents so they would want to come and share with us. But I would very quickly want to ask the CEO to respond to share a little on this, because I know that we've been having breakfast in schools and some of the feeding programs. And so the CEO would be better able to tell us how many areas we are having that project being run in and how we can be able to expand it to other areas. Mr. CEO. Partnership is important.
Thanks for the question. The role of the family is important, and it can't be underestimated. The process around education, around sexuality education, also needs to include parents and guardians. One of the things that we see from our work in sexual and reproductive health and rights is very often that parents and guardians are actually the main barriers towards young people accessing the information and the services they need, because there's a lot of misconceptions that having information, having access to services will encourage young people to become sexually active and have more sex if they're already having sex, and have more babies if they've already had children in their teenage years and so on. So we recommend a holistic approach. It has to involve the family, but that means educating parents, guardians, siblings. We see too in working class communities and so on that it's also often a cycle when one teenage daughter becomes pregnant in her adolescent years, the one 3 years younger it happens to the one 3 years younger, and so on. So intervening with the family there provides an opportunity to do some prevention work. And the entire community needs to be involved. All stakeholders need to be involved. Community-based organizations, family planning, rights-based organizations like GRP and so on. Faith-based groups are increasingly becoming involved in these issues. I spoke about the Catholic Justice and Peace Commission calling for sexuality education in schools. But the school is an important place to start because our kids spend a lot of their waking hours there while parents are away and at work and earning a livelihood. And the school provides a format where we can train teachers, we can involve school counselors, we can involve social workers. We're talking about getting parents to come in and discuss these issues and so on. All of that burden can't fall on the teachers. We also need to have social workers involved in the education system and so on. So we believe in a complete, holistic, community-based approach that educates parents and involves the family so that we break down those misconceptions about sexuality education.
Just to say 2 points on Brother Gill's question. The CEO and 2 other members of the panel did indicate the importance of parents. About 2 years ago, I was doing a small research, so to speak. I was interviewing some students. And there were 3 young men whom I asked what they wanted to do in life. I asked them whether they wanted to be teachers. And they said, "Big man, teachers? No, you want to teach?" I said, "Why don't you want to teach?" And one of them said, "My teacher has a bicycle, and sometimes he comes with an old car." I said, "Whom would you want to be like?" And he spoke about a young man who now has legal and whatever criminal issues. Because according to both of them, that person had, using their terms, fancy rights. Now, there's no plaster and there's no one solution, so to speak. We all have to be involved in trying to bring a reversal to people's attitude. When the chief spoke just now about the movements involving the minister and himself and others, the town hall meetings, I was asking myself a simple question. After they would have left, would the RDC continue in any way? Would the education departments continue the process? That's important. And I mentioned that because all stakeholders, the employers, have a part to play. The church has a part to play. The community has a part to play. There are some respected persons in communities, and they say nothing to people who do wrong. They pass by. We've got to change our behavior. All of us have to change our behavior if we are going to impact the behavior of the young people. So, Brother Gill, it is all of us who are involved. And we've got to try it at home, at nursery, at primary, at secondary, and in every possible avenue,
even the football field and the cricket field, all those places we've got to try to instill in our young people. Look at these values. Look at the ethics and so on. Very important.
Dr. David, sing.
You know, friends, when I listen to the speakers and the observations on the floor, I almost feel as if we are talking about two very different worlds. I'm sorry. I was saying that when I listen to the presenters and the views from the audience and the questions, I'm concerned we are talking about two different worlds, two different Guyanas. A week ago, I was asking a young man who's in the fourth form how many subjects he was planning to do at CXC. I did 9 subjects, and I was at the top of my class. Yeah. He's doing 18 subjects. And I asked him why he's doing 18 subjects. And this is an average young man. He's bright. He said the reason why he's doing that is because that's the only way in which he could be competitive. Tell me something. How many subjects do you need to get into university? Where is the relationship between number of subjects at CXC and number of subjects to get into university? That's point number 1. Point number 2, in 2015, CXC, in spite of Dr. Jules's, the registrar's comments about not tinkering with the system, CXC, in order to further align itself with the Sustainable Development Goals, added one more subject to the 33 subjects it already had on record. It added green engineering on top of its 33 subjects that it already offered. Singapore. We don't oftentimes like to hear about Singapore. In Singapore, the minimum number of subjects you could write at school leaving is 5. The maximum is 9. If you want to write one more subject, you have to have permission from the Ministry of Education to write that one extra subject. How many science subjects do you think is within that 5, that 9? 1 science subject. We are adding, layering on top of our children who are already burdened. We expect that a child to wake up early in the morning, go to lessons, go to school, go back to lessons, come home and be a child? How can that be a family structure in which we operate? I want to put it in the context of 2020, and this is the reason why I'm so firm about 2020. We have at this moment in time, we seem to have the luxury of the academic discussion about environmental reform. From 2020 onwards, we will have a new source of revenues for which we don't have to work. And it will replace all of the revenues from the sugar industry, which has left behind 6,000 plus workers. They no longer have employment. 2020, we'll have if the price of oil remains at $50 a barrel, it'll be $330 million US entering the system. By 2022, if plans go according to the projections, 2022, do you know how much that will be based on the existing agreement with the company? It's going to be $1 billion US. That sounds wonderful, but think, friends, of what that means for our society and our families.
Thank you.
State of emergency, absolutely. Education reform, thinking of it within that time frame. But I want to end with one last thing. This is an opportunity for us. This is a real windfall by which we can change our society's path, if we seize it. If we seize it now.
Thank you so much. And we are going to wrap up now. And I am going to leave with us a quote that I began with: education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And from all the discussions we have heard here tonight, we know that there are various areas upon which we need to focus so that we can actually change the landscape of Guyana. Thank you. At this point in time, I will ask Mr. Yonnick David, a young entrepreneur of Young Entrepreneurs Network, to bring the vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Before Yonnick delivers the vote of thanks, on behalf of Deputy Vice Chancellor Professor Mohamed and the staff, the team at PACE, we would like to present some special tokens of appreciation to our very distinguished and passionate panel this evening. Can I invite you to join me at the front, please?
Let me just add that whatever you get in the bag, just realize you got to give it back to the university. Say that. Also take a good picture with the campus and thank you, Prof. Moderator, much deserving. Yes.
Good evening all. Thank you, Madam Moderator. Professor Griffith, our distinguished members of the head table, members of the diplomatic corps, media and all. I would like to leave here tonight with a quote from Kofi Annan. Knowledge is power, information is liberating, education is the premise of progress. In every society, in every family, unquote. We as a nation cannot progress without continuous education for all. Education does not start in a school, nor does it end there. It is forever continuous. With that, on behalf of the University of Guyana, I would like to thank all our distinguished panelists, and all our guests here tonight for your participation. And I would like to also give special thanks to our sponsors, UNICEF, Ministry of Education, and the Guyana Pegasus. Thank you. Oh, and I guess I'll invite you guys for refreshments in the back.